Hello, this is Max Stroke. I just want to talk about Obsidian again. Now, I did a original video on Obsidian, and then sort of how I was using it up to a point. I then went into somebody then at the one of the comments at the bottom of this particular video was what about um, where's the comment down here? What do you think about logSec? So I went and looked up logSec, and I saw a lot of things in logSec that got me quite excited. So I was sort of leaning towards logSec because it seemed to have this much better ease of use than Obsidian. So I suddenly thought, I've got to the point at this point where I'm actually giving Obsidian a bit of a bad press. So if we just go back to that one through there. So what I decided to do was I decided to carry on. I had my main vault with all of my articles and everything inside Obsidian. I then had another vault that I created that I had logSec and Obsidian both pointing to, because they're both reading markdown files and you can actually do that. And I thought I can use the best things of logSec and I can use the best things of Obsidian and use them on the same one. But as I got into it and started to do a bit more research, a lot of the pros that I found in logSec, I found that I could actually do in Obsidian. So one of the examples of this, the one big major one that I was finding to get over, was I ended up writing a script which was actually bringing images straight into your page inside logSec. I wanted to do the same thing inside Notes. And then I saw it demonstrate, and I thought, well, why didn't I think of that? What I'd actually done is I wrote this script that I could open File Explorer, go and select a screenshot or a file an image file that I'd got, and I just run a hotkey on that one, and it would copy it across into a folder inside my Obsidian vault, and then I could actually just drag it into there. But that was still a 3 or 4 step process at the same. But then I actually found that you can actually just do come on, where are we? Well, I can actually just drag an image through here and just drag that through and put it into there, and it does exactly the same as so that one there I think is one of these time capture ones. I'll time capture through here. Now, one of the things which I did have an issue with this earlier on was that in fact in my screenshot setup, which I use for doing screen capture, inside the preferences for the output, I used to have it the date and time first, and then the title. And what was actually happening is that I wouldn't know which was this because I just get the date. So it was only if you dragged it out here that you could actually see what the title was. So I ended up having to reverse the naming convention inside my screen capture so that I had the title first and then I actually had the thing so that it was easier to look at, so I could just hover to see which one I was actually doing. By the look of it, no, they're two different ones that I'm doing through there. So I can bring the images straight away. So that is easy peasy now. So that's done. That Obsidian now does that straight away. Another thing that I liked in logSec was in fact that you could actually have the video, whereas inside of Obsidian I was actually bringing the video in as a link. So I click on that and I'll get the video coming through. So on this one, this is the syncing one that I'm just doing. Oh, sorry, no, this is a thing. But one of the things that somebody pointed out, now there is an Obsidian plugin that you can get that'll go through Facebook, I think, and all of these other social media ones, and also YouTube, and you can get them and bring them in as an image. Whereas in fact inside here, instead of actually just selecting the title and the URL, you can just come down into share, click on embed and copy the embed code, and if you just put that in, it comes through quite easily. Boom. And now I've just got the iframe through there, so that's really handy. The slight negative thing that I would say about this here is if you can click and watch.
Hello everyone, my name is Anton.
So this is one by Anton, which is about I think further down. If you click on YouTube, it doesn't seem to go to YouTube, so it doesn't go there to do it. So that's a bit of a nuisance. So what I've actually had to do is, if I do want that, I actually have to go and copy the URL and then just go and paste it into here to do. Overall, it's not a big failure for me. I'm happy with that as far as it goes. It's like I do like visuals, and so this gives me visuals. I've got a bit of a hint on what the actual it showed the front screen once I refresh this, but it gives me the visuals, and I prefer to have it this way. And a lot of the times I can actually just check on it. Sorry, the reason why I actually want to get it inside here is a lot of the times I actually want the content, because there might be a link or something like that. Just recently I was actually just doing one on doing classes in Python, and inside the tutorials there was a link to the GitHub where you got the code, so you can just copy it straight into Visual Studio Code and just run that code straight away. So that was dead easy. You didn't have to type it all out from scratch. So that's why I do find there's a bit of an issue. But in some ways, what I'm using Obsidian for is to gather all of this information together, so I know where it is. The fact that I might have to take 2 or 3 steps to actually go and get the information I want, it's not a big deal. I know I've got it in one place, so I may never want to go and get that information again, or if there's a critical bit, I can actually just paste it into the logTech note that I want. So the next thing that it did, it does journals, but Obsidian does daily notes, and I don't use them. So they're both equal on those ones. One thing that I quite liked inside of logSec, is that it had an inbuilt, a core plugin which actually did spell checker. And I then found out that in fact Obsidian had it. I was actually trying to bring in a dictionary plugin, but it actually has the spell checker in there, and you can actually turn it on or off with a hotkey. So you just look up spell checker and then assign a hotkey to it. As it is that one, so I can just right click on there and it puts it through. And you can add extra words to dictionaries if you're doing things like that. Suddenly things which I thought logSec had, which Obsidian doesn't have, Obsidian's got as well. So that's really wonderful. Tabs. When I was first reviewing logSec, it was just Obsidian was just going to version 1. So prior to version 1, you actually had to have a plugin to do tabs, but now the tags come as a core plugin, so they're handy inside Obsidian. So there's no reason to go for that. Inside logSec, it does have the / which actually allows you a drop-down menu that you can do a whole lot of things like bolden, and they've got a few other little commands, sort of templatey things like adding in date and things like that. Inside Obsidian, you've got your date, and if there's something that I specifically want, I can actually just put it to a hotkey. This sort of appealed to me in logSec because it was the same sort of logic of what's in WordPress, which I actually use for a lot of my blogging and for other websites and things, which I've got other pages and stuff. It was easy to go through and choose the type of block or thing that you wanted to use next. So it was sort of pre-ready. You could quickly select from a list of things that you wanted to do. And I haven't found an equivalence of that yet, but again, a lot of those I'd actually put them in a template and just drag them in when I need them. Now the logSec cons was the fact of it does the intents instead of paragraphs, so it's an outliner versus actually just full-blown writing in paragraphs and things like that. Everything starts with the bullet points, and you actually have, and that frustrates me. It's not how I think, and I'm sort of used to sort of just writing and then organising things later. So just automatically doing bullet points sort of, it doesn't feel right to me. I don't like doing it. So that's something. And the other thing that I didn't like about logSec was there was no folder structure. And I do like folder structure because that's how I organise my files on my computer. So I know that if I'm going to do some programming, I'll go into a particular scripting language, and then I can go down for all the ones that I've got folders based on what I'm doing through there and on the topic and the things, and then I'll drill down. If I've got projects, I'll go into particular clients who are doing the projects or particular ones that I'm doing, and then I'll drill down through there. So having this through here, this is the way I generally navigate through things, although sometimes I'll use this. This is, and I'd use the tags if I needed to go and find something that I'm just hunting through to get some information. So overall, You know, I was suddenly thinking that what I thought was good in logSec, Obsidian does well. But then I actually have taken it a bit further through there. Now there's some extra things in which, by going through and doing all of this research on Obsidian, a couple of things that I found out. Now one of the things that I use Obsidian for is actually just to gather a lot of information. It's somewhere where I can start throwing ideas, or I've got a problem, or I've got something that I can actually just start sorting through. And if I've got the base bit of information, I can always come back to it. And when I find out something more, and a lot of times I'll get locked up on something. I'm trying to write a bit of code, and it gets stuck. I can't go forward, and I get really annoyed. So I actually have a place where I can describe the problem. And as I'm describing the problem, I actually find it gives me a couple of avenues to explore. So I then tag those as that. So I can go and explore those avenues. I come back and I either suddenly thinking, oh, I've got all of this and it's taking me somewhere completely different, but I've got a solution, or no, it's a dead end. And then I can step through. So I do find it's a great place to come to first off, to actually do a bit of brainstorming and actually have information through there. So one thing I do quite a lot is I'm actually getting research of one way or another, whether I'm doing a design project or if I'm actually just doing my own personal stuff, and is I'm actually getting an awful lot of stuff off the web. And it's just links to information that I thought, oh, that's interesting, I need to explore that later, or that's actually got the product or the thing that I want, so I actually want to have that as a reference. So one of the things that I ended up doing a hotkey for was that I would find something like an article. So if I had this particular article through here, I ended up with something where I'd copy the URL, then I'd copy the title, copy through there, then I'd actually come into here and I'd just go LLL, I think, and that's a little hotkey written in order hotkey or in ATEX through here that then just joins the two up. So it puts the title in the square brackets and puts the URL in the curly brackets through there. So that was all right. It sort of worked quite well, except I've got to do copy once, copy twice, and then come in and do the paste. But in fact, so who was that? Let me just find out who that was. So this is something I want to acknowledge. So this sorry, no, I actually want to go to shift down S to here.
All right, hey there, welcome. This is Santi. Today I want to share with you.
This is Santi, that's right. So Santi is the one who got me onto this thing inside Firefox, which is, it's an add-in through here called Copy as Markdown. Now, if we just look at the actual plugin through here, or the add-in through here, you can get the current tab link, or you can get all tab links, or all tabs title, or all tabs URL. There's all these variations of the blooming thing. But basically, I only want one, which is the current tab, title, and URL. And it's going to copy them with a bracket and the thing. And I've got a hotkey for that, so I've just assigned a hotkey. Now inside, when you've got shortcuts, if you've got something, you can actually come up into this cog up here, go into there, manage shortcuts, and assign one. So this one will grab all the tabs title and the URLs, or all tabs title, or I just do the current one. That's all I'm interested in at this point in time. So I can come into here, I can actually use Alt M that I've got the hotkey for. You'll see there's a little green tick that now comes onto there. I can now just go into my Obsidian, into the logSec through there where I'm demonstrating this, and just go Control V, and it puts it in there for me straight away. So it's a two-step process instead of the three-step, which was selecting the URL and then selecting the title and then going through and doing the LLL and pasting it through into here. So now I actually just Alt M grabs me all of that information, and then I just come in and Control P straight through there. Another one which I just find is sometimes you've written information, and what I find that I do is that I drag something to the very top, and then I'll do something like use Alt R to actually bolden something off, something saying that's something I've got to deal with now, or something. I just want to highlight something, and if I just go back and grab all of that again and go Alt plus E and take away, so I'd highlight things. So it might be something halfway down the thing, but because I most probably would walk past it and not notice, there's this thing called admonitions, which is just a markdown thing that you can do, but Obsidian's got one. Now when I set this up to begin with, and let's just go into the admonitions through here. Where's my admonitions? If I just go admonition plugin. So when I first did this, I had it set up this way, where I actually had a list of, it's basically, look, so you've got the 3 tilde backslashes, and then you've got this AD, and then you can choose anything. So if I wanted this to be a note, I'd copy from, or I'd actually take whatever one there, and then I'd delete the rest out, and then you just have the text. So it's very similar to the code, and once you click out of it, it will give you a different color. So it's sort of highlighting things inside your article that you want to just pull out and highlight things, so that you can have things like, and I quite like it because like sometimes I'll get a link and I'll suddenly say this is interesting, and now what I'm actually doing is I'm getting a quote from that link and just putting it into a quote box. So suddenly that's the thing that's grabbed me. So just in some recent articles that I've just been doing on climate, inland water flooding, this was a particular article, and then I suddenly said they were finding that primary climate related stress testing analysis by the Reserve Bank said that river and surface water flooding was a greater risk as far as insurances go, rather than coastal flooding. And I thought, well, actually that seems right, because of the large catchments area. Everybody wants to live on the flat land, and they want to live near a waterway, etc., etc. So yes, there is most probably, even globally rather than just locally, it's more that rather than coastal, it's actually going to be a lot of internal things, and that's from an insurance point of view, not necessarily a death or related one. So I can just pull out a bit of information that relates to that link that I can then follow up with, but it sort of gives me a quick overview on things. So I find this is a really great tool to use things. So the admonitions thing. So initially I had the admonitions plugin set up like this, and then I'd have to delete all the ones I wanted, and then I'd actually have to copy the bit of the article that I wanted to put inside there, and go and put that into there and go V, and then delete all of these other ones that I didn't use. So on this one here, we then got all of that junk. So I just said and get out of that again. That was my first crack at it, but I suddenly thought, yeah, it's not quite working well for me, but I do like the concept, and I do like what it actually does, because it sort of emboldens and draws my eye to the bit that I want, a bit like an image or a bit like a video clip or something like that. So I then had another crack at this, where at this point in time, I've got another one. So if I want an admonitions on something, like let's just say I come down and it's these last two. Why have I got them? Shift tab. Oh, they've gone back to bullet points. Oops. I can actually select this item here and go copy. I'm just going to copy at this point in time just to have as a demo. Now I can actually go Alt H, which is my admonitions. Now I've got it as I can choose whichever one that I wanted, and I can use the warning one, and then I can go OK, and if I click out of there, it does not like bullet points. Let's see if it works there. Now it comes through and does that. It doesn't like what bullet points, so you've got to do that. But there I've actually got that information in there. So what it actually did back there, so I'm just going to delete that. What it actually did, oops, oh no, I need to just grab all of that and delete it, is you select a bit of information you want, and in fact I should actually just go Control Copy down, and then go Alt H, because it's actually just copying anything from the clipboard. So it's getting the latest stuff from the clipboard and then just putting it into just put it in as a bug and go OK, and there it is. and I've got a little highlight. Actually, the red's not really showing up in the videos and stuff through there, but in fact, it's quite handy. And I suppose if I instead of having the dark thing, the light thing, but it highlights. It gives me a little icon thing that sort of my eye jumps to that particular thing at that point in time. So I found that to be a really useful thing to do, and I'll have to sort of get used to the colours to see which ones jump out more and which ones, but I think you can actually even build your own. It's a bit like, it's just a code block, but it's used in a slightly different way. But I do find it's an elegant solution, and I found with that extra scripting, it's an easier way to do stuff. Now the third one that I'd started to look at, and when I started to reflect on how I use Obsidian, I use it as a big collator, and prior to Obsidian I'd actually have notes all over the place, and that's what I found really frustrating. And sometimes I'd go straight onto my WordPress blog site and actually put information onto there. So I'd end up with a lot of draft WordPress posts that maybe, and then suddenly I end up with 45 draft ones that I sort of got an idea, wanted to develop further, and never took anywhere. And one of the reasons I didn't, my WordPress sites are run off a virtual private server, so I'm renting a Windows server in Germany, just because it was cheaper, because I was doing some other things at the time, and I've sort of got used to it now. And it sort of worked for me because in Germany, because it's 12 hours difference from here, or maybe 11 hours, generally when they're all asleep, I've actually got access to the server, so it's going quite fast. When they're sort of waking up, if I start doing things in the middle of the night, it starts getting a bit sluggish because they're going full bore through there. Not that there is that much difference, but I have found that actually doing it on a WordPress or just doing it over the interwongle can be quite slow. That's the pleasure of actually having a local folder, which is Obsidian. So I suddenly realised I was actually using Obsidian. I find I get more and more pleasure from, because I throw it all in one place, and then I can distribute it for other things, like for projects or this and that and the other, and other stuff that I'm actually doing. And one of the tools that I suddenly thought that I thought was quite important was actually Obsidian will do a publish, but I don't like their idea of actually having a further medium to publish on. I've got all my WordPress, and I've been publishing on there for quite a few years, so I want to maintain that. So the fact that I'm using a different tool, I've been using WordPress for a lot longer, so I actually want this one to be working in sync with that. So when I looked at that, my first attempt was using an online converter, which would take the note, markdown, and then you just copy and paste it into the online converter, and it converts it from markdown into HTML. Then I'd paste that inside the WordPress post that I was trying to do. So that was the first crude attempt that I did. The second one that I did is I found a WordPress plugin that lets you import a markdown file, and you can upload it. So it actually uploads your markdown and converts it into HTML. So that's quite good. It's a sort of you just go to your WordPress, you click on that, you go and find your markdown, you find your vault, you click on the file that you want, and then you just upload it, and that goes to a certain extent through there, and that sort of worked. But I found that it's sort of the logic of it sort of confused me slightly, because I'm writing in Obsidian, and then I have to go into WordPress and then come back and find the little folder that I was using in Obsidian. And then I actually found there was another one which was an Obsidian plugin that allows you to export an Obsidian note to a WordPress, and it's called, the plugin's called Obsidian to WordPress. And there's here's an article on it, or here's a video clip on it, and I'll put the link to all of these things in there. And
hello everyone, my name is Anton, and
so this is Anton who's doing this. So Santi for the other one, and Anton for this one, and he steps through the whole process of how to do that. And he has a whole lot of template with all of the things, and he checks what comes across. Now, what I've actually found inside the pushing through, so I've got a little icon here which actually goes to WordPress publish. So I can actually just be in this particular article and go and push it up into WordPress. You've got to do some logins and stuff on your WordPress site through here. It actually has them that you do, and then you push it up there. Now, pretty much most things goes across. Now, if I just come through into this one here, this is an article that I wrote inside of here. So let me just look at let's look for, here's my search thing, clippings, clippings for Firefox. So if we look at this article, I've got a bit of text, I've got a video link through there, I've got 3 links through here, and then I've got some images at the bottom. Well, that's the Obsidian one, and this is what it looks like inside inside of WordPress. So it came through, this all came through beautifully, this came through. My one little comment about this, the links seem to cut that if you click on this link, it'll just open up this tab. So I've got to remember to right hand click, or I might have to go and adjust these links so that they open in a new tab. That's my preferred way. I do find it absolutely infuriating. You're reading an article, you follow a link, but you still, the link relates to things, so you still want to read this article, and suddenly you've gone onto this other page. You suddenly, no, I wanted that into a separate tab so that I can switch between the two. So I normally do that. So that's one little thing that I don't particularly like. It brings through the different header stuff through there and stuff, so I find it quite handy to use. Now what it doesn't do is it doesn't bring in images, and but I'm not too fussed with that. Because of the fact that inside of in WordPress there's a really nice one that I use, a plugin which is Ultimate Shortcuts, and it's got a whole load of free things. You can have concertinas, you can have all sorts of things, and carousels, things that you can add into your post quite nicely. But it doesn't do images. The image is in the Pro version, and it's actually quite complicated too. I started to try and write all the hotkey scripts to actually bring in images and stuff like that into WordPress. But what WordPress does, when it uploads an image, but it does it by the month of when, what the current month is through there. So it puts them in a folder through there, and it actually creates a thumbnail size ones and possibly 2 or 3 different sizes as well, depending on how you're reading your web pages and stuff. And it also then has to have a link in the database as well to all of the different files that have been created, or image files, the reduced ones and stuff like that. And so it's got to store them, and it's also got to associate them with specific notes as well, because you might use that image in 2 or 3 different posts or something. You might have it in your pages as well. So what it does inside WordPress is complicated. So the fact that I can't actually bring my images across straight away, I'm not that fussed, because I had difficulty doing that directly inside WordPress as well. So it's just a little thing that you have to do. Now this was a common article that I was actually just writing about, so I knew where these images are. So if I was doing an article and I suddenly have got an article 3 months old and I finally got the last bits of data for it, and then I thought, I now want to publish that inside WordPress, where are my images? And I might have to go hunting to go and find where my image has been located. Because one of the things that I do inside of Obsidian is I actually have this folder which actually has all of my file assets in there. But what I do is when there's too many of them, I start making subfolders, just dragging some of them and putting them into the subfolders. So they're not necessarily in the location they started off with, but they still work, and they still associate with whatever they're meant to do. So it just means I've got to do a little bit more hunting to find that particular file in a way. So I haven't come across that circumstance yet. But just at this point in time, the fact that I can actually just go and get an article and shove most of it up onto WordPress, absolutely brilliant, and I can do it all within the Obsidian itself. So it sort of makes me lean even further. So this is where I'm suddenly thinking Obsidian is where I'm getting my ideas, my notes, and I'm developing some of my notes to do that. I'm also doing some of my project management when I was actually writing some books and actually authoring and using the Kanban for that sort of thing. But so I was doing my project management in there, and if I got some other projects, I'm doing notes on those, and I'm keeping folders and things. So that it's seriously meeting my needs so well. The Obsidian issues that I still have, the graph is a pain in the backside to me. So when actually I've normally when I open up, that's where the graph is, and I find it really irritating. And if you suddenly think, you look around for zoom, where's zoom for this? There's nothing to actually do. The actual zoom in and out is actually minus minus or plus plus. But what I do is, if I try using my mouse and scrolling out, this is what happens. It suddenly disappears into infinity, and this is quite nice. I blocked it, I think, to this point in time. So in here, I can actually just start. If I just try scrolling in, it just zooms to infinity again, and then so that's one. That's maybe 20 degrees of a scroll. So it just disappears completely. So I find it frustrating. So I have to use the plus keys, but after a while, especially with OBS in here, it sort of slows down. So I find I'm doing an awful lot of fiddling, just navigating into the graph before I can do things. Now, one thing I have found when doing the graph is that you can actually, if you just go Control-Shift-A, just cycle through and cycle through into here. If you go into the Obsidian vault, inside the Obsidian vault are a couple of grayed out, so there must be hidden files or ones I don't want you to deal with. So sorry, so they start with a dot, so normally they're that. So if we go into the dot folder through there, you'll see there's one called graph.json, and if you click on the graph.json, I've actually got Visual Studio Code, which is opening these. You can go into this scale at the bottom here and fix this scale so that you know preset. So a lot of the times this is up at 7, 10, 15 or something, it's zoomed right in. The thing is here, if the scale, you reset the scale, you've got to come back into Obsidian and reload it for that to occur. Now if I try doing a reload now, it's going to take quite a while, just because I've got my video recording program on at the same time. But here's a way that I've been able to get in and have a little bit more confidence with getting the graph at the correct scale to begin with. And as I said, I get so distracted by just trying to get to visualize the blooming thing that I forget what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to explore. So that's one thing I haven't been able to feel I've been happy about. And another one that I'm playing around with at this point in time is getting the day into the date on a template. Now, if you just go and look, I've got a little article that I'm exploring this at the moment. When you're doing templates, we can actually come into here. So you've got these variables like title, date, or time. So inside the date, if you want to modify it, because you might have presets in your main settings that has your date and things formatted in a different way, but you may want them set up in a different way, so you can use this colon and then show you formatting in a different way. So I started to do that where I actually just wanted day, month, year, and then I then suddenly thought I actually want the day of the week through there, and then it talks about using moment.js format token, and I haven't been able to figure this one out, how to use it inside there. When you do what you would think is the obvious thing, which is, so the format, let's just go into there. So the format thing is this bit through here that maybe I want. So this would show me that. So it gets most of it across as to what I want. If I just copy and paste this in here, you'd think, and it kind of says, yeah, you just use that and you add it onto the other one. I started to do that on some of my templates on this meta one through here, and it sort of starts falling to bits and it doesn't work particularly well. So I'm still fumbling with that a bit, because I do like to actually have the day and the thing, because sometimes I'm 3 days in or something and I can't remember the day of the week, but sorry, I can't remember the date, but I can remember the day of the week, and I was like, oh yeah, I did that a couple of days ago. It's been that long. So I find it's a good, just a nice little jogger for me. My own personal preference, that's just something that I like. Another thing which I had as well, an issue when I first had my meta tags, so if I go into a lot of my other ones, when I actually had my tags with these ones in there, and I was trying to use status so I could actually have draft things and stuff, and then the old ones used to have the title, but then version 1 came out and it actually automatically has the title into there. So if I actually just come into and I create a new note and I come into there and I just bring in that story one, I'm going to call this, going to do something with my meta through here, and I'm going to copy a bit of meta from there, and I go into story, and I just put it as a separate one, VV. So I've got that one through there. That's in the story. So I'll close that one. And that's the same matter, so I'll close that one again. Now that's confusing. So if I open up a new untitled one, and I just blow all of that away and just go out and T to bring in that one story, actually that's interesting because it's coming through on tags where he wasn't before. I was finding I actually had to remove that, and then if I did a new tag, so I ended up with one which has got multiple, it would come in. But if I had this other one with the status, it wouldn't come in. It wouldn't come in at all, but it seems to be coming in from the template itself, which this one. So if I have a different one in here, which is just one specific to this, you see it's not coming through. Oh, now it is coming through. I'm confused by this because when I was bringing my ones through, if it had this, it just wouldn't work. Although I must admit I did actually have these ones in here at the same time, and that sort of caused the error, so it didn't work. So it wouldn't recognize this as the correct YAML. Now I prefer this method, the YAML, rather than the hash and then coming down and selecting the one that I want, because it can be a bit fiddly. So if I actually just go Obsidian, then suddenly I've got the other ones, Obsidian to work, or whatever one's through there. It's sort of got a bit bold. So I prefer having the ones here. I can just put them in straight away. So I prefer using the YAML at the front, and initially I had a lot of the problems with the YAML, but now I find that it's starting to work. I still can't figure out why it works now and it wasn't working before, but it does. So that's the important thing. So now I can get my tags back in the method that I actually want. So I find that's quite good. The fact that I've got a couple of placeholders there and then I just throw in what I do want is handy. So all of mine now I've taken out the title because it automatically comes in at the top. So it's just that date formatting at the moment that I would like to get achieved. So, but that's a sort of a trivial thing. It's not a deal breaker under any means at all. I think I was pleased with using, when I did the first video, I was pleased with using Obsidian, but it had all these awkwardnesses things. I found out about logSec, and it had all of these things, especially when I was watching the videos that let me go through all of that. I find that the Obsidian ones, they tend to focus on one particular thing. Those ones with the logSec beginners tutorials sort of covers everything, and it's quite good because it gets you up and running really well. So now what I'm trying to do is just suddenly saying, for my needs as the way they do, there's an awful lot of the plugins, but again, you're just going to have a few that you prefer, and in some ways when you look at the plugins and things that you've got, the more plugins you've got, the more time it's actually going to take to load, and then you use it. And in fact, I sort of pull a plugin in, try it out. If it doesn't work for me, I actually just unload it completely and get away. And I suddenly thinking I might revisit a couple of months later. I won't leave it sitting on my system. I'll just take it off completely and just pick up and put down. So, I'm so wrapped with, I find this highlighting stuff, I think it works better than just highlighting a bit of text with a bit of colour, like that. I find these things do work for me, and I can say what my concern is as well. So it's a lot more descriptive than just, I've got a bit of colour and I don't like it. Sorry. Control Y, and we're good. I'm totally on the side of Obsidian, and it's meeting nearly all of the needs that I actually have at the moment. I would really like to explore some of my ideas via the graph to see some of the interconnectability, because I think there's a lot more connections I can start associating with things that I'm actually doing. The other thing that I find from a project point of view is that I pick up and put down projects overall, and I get so far on them, and then I come back to them later and I can't remember what I've done, especially with some of my coding ones. So it's quite nice to actually drag in a file with some of my code sitting in there. Now I noticed that when I was actually in logSec, when I actually clicked on my code block or the file which actually ran a script, it would activate that script straight away. But I haven't found the same thing inside of Obsidian. Although I'm not that fussed with it in a way. I have got it one up here to test it out in a way, because I'm not really running it inside Obsidian. I'll actually start going back into the main program of where I'm working, which would be Visual Studio Code, and working there. And also the other thing which I found was quite interesting as well is that you can actually go File, Open Folder, and you can go into that I thought was quite cool. I hadn't thought about it that much, but it's sort of handy. Is that you can go in and let's just find an article and science. Oh no, sorry. I always get confused with this. I look for a file. We actually want to go to that folder. Select the folder. Do you want to don't save? We'll say at this point in time. And now what it'll do, yes, I trust the author, and now I can actually come in and I can actually see my I can actually do some of my editing inside of Visual Studio Code. Not that I'd really want to, but it is sort of handy, although you do need the markdown plugin, markdown lint, and I've got a markdown all-in-one, I think is the one that I'm using for that, so it actually displays it nicely. So I find it's that I haven't actually had to go into there, but if I was doing some of the coding, it might be an easy way to just copy and paste code into there. If I've got it of just having a code block and actually pasting in my little snippet of whatever I found to be quite useful. So that's just another feature that I do find, but that's a feature of Markdown and a feature of Visual Studio Code, so it's got nothing to do with Obsidian, because that same feature would be in logSec too. So this is really just an update on, I sort of left it as either or, but in fact I would actually just personally stay with Obsidian at this point in time, because it's definitely meeting all of the needs that I actually have. And again, I like the paragraph, and that is my big dislike of logSec, is that it's doing this, it's doing the outliner. And I tried fiddling with it to stop that from happening, and it wouldn't. So I go to a preference on what I do. So thank you very much for watching.